guys, as a software engineer, I have been developing like for the past 10 years of my life, and trust me, over the past 10 years I've begun to realize or identify some things as to what makes the top tier software engineers tick, and then what will make you not tick, like the things that you need to be aware of. And I've tried to compile it in as a short video as possible. All right, so number one is the ability to go through code you did not write. See, this is something that engineers do not talk about a lot in the industry, but like 70-80% of your career as a software engineer, you'll be going through code base that you did not write, like unfamiliar code, right? You don't even know what went on into the architecture, what were the design decisions. Like, you're not there from the beginning when the code was being written, and you have to like go there, and you're required to understand how things are working and build on top of it. So most of the time you'll be lucky to be working on code that you wrote on your own. But like 70% of the time you go through huge, and there are some code bases that have layers and layers and layers of abstraction. You see a function, and you have to like sort of jump to like 2-3 different files to even understand what that particular function is doing, or a class. So it's crazy. So if you don't have that skill of entering into the code and then seeing how things work over there, and finding a way to build on top of it, sticking to how, and also making sure that things are uniform, then you are going to have a hard time in this industry. So the ability to understand code that others have written is extremely important, like no cap, right? Now, number two, ability to learn new technologies on the go. See, truth is, nobody knows everything. There's no way you can know 100% of every single technology out there. There's a lot of them that you have to pick up along the way. There are times in my 9 to 5, I've had to learn new technologies on the fly, right? And it's just how the industry is. You may have to pick up this tool, or maybe you know this stack but you don't know this stack, or maybe you're more comfortable here but you're not comfortable here. So you need to be able to adopt, and speed is everything. Like, your company wants you to be fast, your client wants you to be fast with your features and stuff. Like, you cannot afford to be slow, right? So not only do you need to just learn on the surface or just copy code from everywhere, you need to actually understand what this technology is doing, and you need to understand it on the fly, like as fast as possible. Okay, so being able to pick up like technologies fast is very important. So you need to try and learn what works for you. To some people, watching videos works for them. To others, reading through documentation or reading articles works for them. You need to know how you need to know what resource actually works for you, and then you go in that direction. So that is number two. Number three is ability to read through documentation. See, there are times that I have saved myself a lot of time by just going directly to the site documentation, like, or whatever technology I'm using. So for example, you want to get started with let's say maybe .NET, or maybe let's say Laravel, or let's say Node. You want to get started with Node, right? Now the first thing you normally do is to go through maybe find a tutorial video on it to see how it works. Like, I love to start with like maybe a 15 minutes or 20 minutes crash course on YouTube, for example, just to get a sense of how that particular language is. So if it's Node I want to do, I find like 20-15 minutes. That 20-15 minutes video, I'm not really practicing along. I'm just watching whoever is teaching to just get a blurry picture of how things work on that level. Then once I get that blurry picture, or I try to get the thinking behind that particular stack, then I jump to the documentation. So I start reading through either articles, or if the technology has a very good documentation on their site, I go directly there. Now the documentation on their site can usually be complicated, because because as compared to tutorials where people have already gone through and then they are sort of making it easy for you to understand, for documentation you have to try and understand it on your own, so it makes it a bit tricky. But going that route, you're able to get a bit more technical or go deeper into the underlining concept of the framework, such that when you go back to a tutorial, it's a bit easier to understand what is going on. So being able to go through documentation is massive. Also, there are things that there's so much headache we can save ourselves as engineers if only we spend a short while to go through technology documentation. Sometimes we are googling on Stack Overflow and maybe chat GPT or stuff like that, and we are not even getting the answers. But spending a little time, sometimes even if it's an open source repo, just going through the issues other people have reported and stuff like that will give us a lot of insight into that particular technology. So knowing how to go through a documentation is very important. Also, when you want to integrate things like a third-party APIs into your project, for example, you are building a platform, you need to integrate something like Stripe, right? You need to go through the Stripe documentation. You need to be able to know where to find what you need. All right, need to know, okay, what endpoints can I use for this? How can I combine the endpoints into building the functionality that I need? What data are these endpoints requiring? How do I configure my webhooks? What are the things that are involved? It's super important for you to be able to do that. So that's number 3. Number 4, you need to be able to identify patterns in technologies, right? So for example, let's say in Angular, we have a concept called interceptors, right? So with interceptors, any outgoing HTTP calls or incoming HTTP calls, you can automatically pick it up and then do something with it without having to manually do it every single time. So let's say you are making an authentication call, you have to attach like a bearer token or an authorization header. You can use an interceptor to intercept the request and add it automatically without having to call it each time, right? In C# there's a concept called request handlers, right? So in C# with handlers, it does the same thing, right? But if you don't take care, you wonder, whoa, what is a request handler? What do they mean by handler? So being able to identify that, oh, okay, the handler in C# is just another fancy term for the interceptors in Angular, right? And you need to understand the underlying meaning behind all of these things, because technologies just like to throw words around, but understanding the patterns within them it really matters. Database migrations in Laravel, for example, we have migrations. How do they work? In Python, Django, we have migrations. How do they work? In C#.NET, we have migrations. In most of these languages, Node, we have migrations, right? So what is the underlying concept behind migrations? So understanding these patterns will help you to adopt and understand other technologies faster, because in a way you're able to bring some previous knowledge into the current technology that you are doing, and sometimes it helps making a bit more abstract concepts clearer, right? So number 5 is the ability to do critical thinking and logical reasoning. So I think you probably have heard this several times. Critical thinking, logical reasoning, these are very, very important things you have to know as a, like, I wouldn't say you have to know them. I'll say they are skills you have to develop. So don't always focus on developing the apps or the project. Sometimes try out things that are a bit more theoretical in computer science. Learn things like data structures and algorithms. Most of the time, you may not even apply this in real life, but one thing I've realized is that they really do help you to improve your reasoning skills. So I realized that since I started taking data structures and algorithms more seriously, practicing it consistently each week, like I think I spend about 1 hour each day, maybe 3 or 4 times, maybe 3 times a week, to just learn data structures. Always go back to the basics and practice something. What you find out is that anytime in a real production environment or in a real project, you are sort of supposed to fix a problem, you begin to notice that the way you think around the problem, the way you try to come up with ideas, it just gets better. You also get more intentional about the code that you are writing. So you know that, okay, you know that there's a time complexity, there's space complexity. Now you start thinking deeply into your queries, right? What is the performance of my query I'm writing? You don't just get up and slap things together. You are looking at your loops, your switch statements, how you are organizing your code. It all helps, and all these things are intrinsic. They are not things that comes just because you have 10 years experience, right? You can have 20 years experience, and then yes, though your logical reasoning or your critical thinking skills will not be par, right? As long as you've been developing in some way, obviously you are getting experience, right? It's just like working out at the gym. The mere fact that you are growing up each day doesn't mean you are getting stronger, right? Or the mere fact that you are hitting the gym each day doesn't mean you are getting stronger. You could be hitting the gym by doing things very wrongly. All right. So you have to be intentional about the particular type of workouts that you are doing for your mind, right? If it's reading, when you are reading a book, it's a different type of thing in your mind you are training, right? You are training your verbal skills, you are training your language, right? But if you are doing something like data structures and algorithms, you are not training your language or how you speak. You are training how you think through problems, because it requires you to write things on paper, Sudoku, think through the flow of the code and all of that stuff. So this makes it very important for you to develop this type of skills and then improve it. I feel like everybody comes with this type of skills, but you just need to get better and better and better. So having it is very important, so that like basic problems do not trip you up all the time. Okay, so very key. Now, number 6, I don't hear people talk about this a lot, but it is collaboration and good communication skills. I'm not going to lie. Being able to communicate with your team members, your bosses, your managers is very important, because in software engineering, there's so much, like the little miscommunication can cause a lot of problems. It can cause your company or your clients to lose a lot of money, and you also lose a lot of time on projects. So being able to master how to communicate, whether it's on phone, whether it's through Zoom call, whether whoever you are dealing with likes to communicate through text messages, whatever it is, especially when you're working remotely, it even becomes more critical, because unlike in person where you can actually, nothing beats in-person communication. Now that there's a lot of digital channels, it becomes very tricky. And I'll say this: always try to be as verbal as you can via text, right? Especially in remote work, learn to communicate your ideas through text. Add emojis, add all of these things. Let people try to let people feel what you are doing. Okay, because one thing I realize is that a lot of people are blunt on the way they communicate over digital media, right? You may even think, like, imagine having a Zoom call with your boss and then sounding a bit dull. Your boss may even think that you don't feel like working with them, or you are not in a good mood or stuff like that. If they were there with you in person, probably they will see reactions on your face and know that you are okay. So then over the digital call, you have to do a bit more extra work in order to to exude that particular energy that you want to do, right? You want to give. Okay, so that is also very, very important. Collaboration and good communication skills. Also, you need to know how to express your frustrations. Don't be disrespectful, don't be unresponsive, don't give silent treatment. All right, so always have that in mind. Then last one, number 7, last but not least, I'll say ability to relax and also do deep work. All right, why am I saying this? Your mental state is everything, right? Anytime I'm faced with problems that I realize that I'm doing everything possible, I'm not figuring out the solution, I have my ways of relaxing. I take a break. Sometimes I even end up watching a movie, or I sleep, or I do something totally differently. Okay, it's very important for you to know how, like, what takes for you, because then definitely you are going to meet challenges that just they drive you crazy. Like sometimes I want to hit my head against the wall, like give up on life itself, Charlie, and it gets very tricky. So know how to relax, and always learn how to sort of know yourself in a way that anytime you are getting stressed out, you immediately sense it immediately before it gets too far. Because if you don't do that, it's going to really affect your health, your blood pressure, your sugar, because like we are always sitting, we are always like behind the screens, and also knowing how to relax is very important, and taking breaks. Then the other parts of this, being able to do deep work, right? Know how to zone out. Know when to listen to music while working, and know when not to listen to music while working. I'm not going to lie to you, there are times that listening to things like music or stuff like that is really counterproductive. Maybe not for you, but for me, I've realized that if I'm doing very serious work, I don't listen to music. The only time I'm listening to music is when I'm doing, like, what I'm doing is a bit shallow, and something I can just breeze through easily. But anytime I try to zone in and be very productive, I don't go the music way, because it's one more thing your brain has to think about and your brain has to process behind the scenes without you knowing it. So it's like you are really splitting resources along the way, right? There's a time you zone out. Sometimes with some people, music helps them to zone out, and that is fine. But for the most part, I realize that music is really counterproductive. If you can develop the habit of getting into the flow state without any type of external stimulation, I feel like you have like peak maximum performance. It's one of those times that when you're able to enter that zone, you're able to bang out like crazy productivity and code. You look back and realize that, whoa, am I the one who actually did this? Right? So it's crazy. So yeah, these are my 7 tips for, I feel like these are skills that I feel like every developer, every software engineer must have, because it's really important. Let me know in the comment section what you think about these tips, whether you agree with me or whether you have like some additional tips that you want to share, and I really want to hear you out, and then we communicate. I hope this video helped you, and please, if you've not already subscribed, please subscribe, and then like the video, and give me the vim, give me the morale, to do more videos, and expect more videos too as well. I got a lot of more tutorials coming up, full stack development, deployment and stuff coming on. So if you haven't yet subscribed, once again, please like and subscribe and leave your comments, okay? And I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.